So hello everybody. Yes, this is the WCA webinar series. We'll be starting really soon. We're just waiting for everyone to log in. So we'll just give people a few more seconds to log in and then we'll kick off. We won't wait too long. Won't keep you waiting. We know it's your lunch break. Hopefully everyone's got a sandwich or something in front of them.
Except for us.
Yeah, I need a sandwich. I'll be starving by the time we're over. Just give it another few more seconds and then we'll kick it off. Look, the numbers look pretty stable. What I'll do is I will start. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm Ruth Harris. I'm the Executive Officer at WCA. This is the webinar on the tyranny of distance, communicating with your export partners. Most of our speakers are coming to you today from Ghana land, which is in South Australia, but Liz is in Wadandi Budja, the saltwater people's country in WA. We also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all are working today, their strong connection to country and also to the seasons of the land. The content will probably take about 40 minutes, including Liz presenting and then our exporters, our three exporters, giving you some examples of how these tips are applied in real life. But there will be time for some questions at the end. So what we ask you to do is, if you look on your Zoom screen, somewhere you've got two different boxes. You've got a chat box and you've got a Q&A box. The Q&A box is where we would like you to put any of your questions. The chat box is really for if you've got a technical issue, something you can't hear somebody or whatever, maybe put that there because Alex will be able to see that. But your Q&A, your questions should go in the Q&A box, and these will be saved by Zoom. So if we don't get to them today, we can answer them later. This webinar is recorded, so you'll also get a link to the recording should you wish to watch it again, and also because members also can see past recordings. I'm now going to introduce our first speaker, Liz Mencel. Liz has been involved in export all her working life, 30 years or so, and about 20 of those actually just focused in wine export. For the last 5 years, Liz has been managing WA Wines to the World, which is Wines of Western Australia's state export program with Hydra Consulting. So she's been involved in export for such a long time, she knows the importance of good communication with export partners. Prior to her role with WA Wines to the World, Liz held export sales and marketing management roles at Domain Naturalist, Flame Tree Wines and Stella Bella Wines. And prior to that, Liz spent 7 years with the Country Vintner, which is a major US-based wine importer and distributor, where she managed their Australian and New Zealand imports. Liz is also a board member of Wine Communicators of Australia. So now it is my pleasure to hand over to our main presenter, Liz, who's going to talk about the tyranny of distance, communicating with your export partners.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm just going to share my slides here. Okay. So welcome, everybody. This is a really important topic, of course, when it comes to export, but it's also highly relevant to domestic markets. There are some aspects that we'll cover today that will be very specific to international markets, but by and large, it's relevant across all your communicating with your distribution partners. So really valuable information. Okay, so these are the 5 simple steps to improving your communications that we're going to run through today. I will, in some further slides, elaborate on each of these and give some examples. And then, of course, we'll hear from Brad and Matt and Stephen, who's going to give you some real life applications in their business and give you some stories. So you're probably looking at all these 5 steps and thinking, okay, yep, got that. I know all these things. They all make perfect sense. It's certainly not rocket science. These are all very straightforward and largely very simple to implement in your business. The key here is that not a lot of people implement these things well in their business. So it's really important that you get on top of these and try implementing them in your business, and you will see that there are marked improvements. There is an element of progression through these 5 steps, and there's also areas of crossover, of course. So we'll probably dance around in the examples a little bit, and there will be some reference to one or more of the points. But let's make a start and let's go through these 5 steps. So the first one that I would like to touch on is a really important foundational step, and that is setting your expectations together with your distribution partners and checking in regularly. So this is absolutely key. You need to sit down and set your expectations together and don't make any assumptions. It's really important at the start of your relationship to cover off on all of your key operating parameters, your performance criteria, all the elements of support that you'll need to cover off. This can be done in a formal distribution agreement, but it does not have to be. And I think we'll probably hear some examples today along these lines. There are a lot of smaller importers and distribution partners out there who are not comfortable entering into formal legal agreements, and you certainly don't want to put up barriers to doing business with anyone or scare anyone off with really lengthy distribution agreements. If you can get a simple 1 or 2 page agreement, great. But if not, just the process of sitting down and working through all these key areas, the critical areas, where you all need to be able to agree and set your expectations together. This is the important aspect here, and getting it in writing. So that can just be an email confirmation. Okay, but it's the process of being able to sit down, agree on things together, and make sure that you cover off on all the key areas without assuming anything. As I said, confirm your expectations in writing. Once you've done this, you need to be able to check back in on a regular basis. You certainly need to sit down before the start of the new financial year and plan annually. Look at the year ahead. Have a look at what happened the year past, where things went well, where things didn't go well. Have a discussion about how you can improve business and hit your targets moving forward, and what new promotions and support can be provided. And this is really important, I really want to emphasize this point, is scheduling regular 2-way communications. So not just checking in by email, which is very much a one-way form of communication. Yes, people will respond to you, but it's having that dialogue, that real-time 2-way dialogue, which is really important, and just teasing out elements which are important to your business. I would suggest that process should happen quarterly. For some of you, it may be even more than that, but at least every 6 months to just take the time, schedule a face-to-face, and sit down and run through those expectations together. Okay, so the next step is understanding pricing and margin expectations. So what does this have to do with communications? Pricing and margin expectations are so critical and so key to your outcomes for your business. We're not here for the love of it. At the end of the day, both sides want to make money. And so it's absolutely essential to have a detailed discussion around pricing, and make sure you do it early in the relationship. Make sure you check back in. It can be a difficult discussion to have sometimes, but if you've got someone who is absolutely committed to working with you in a partnership role, and your distribution partner should be, then it's really important to be able to sit down and have an open discussion as much as possible from your FOB pricing right through to wholesale and shelf pricing and everything in between, and really understanding every element along the way. What are the pressure points? How can these things change? How do these things affect your distributors or your buying partners? So do not avoid this absolutely essential conversation. Have it early and have a detailed, good, open, transparent conversation. So that you are prepared and you feel confident in your discussions. Make sure, of course, that you do your homework and you're very well researched. So know your numbers in advance. There are a number of widely available tools that you can use in order to set your pricing. We can put some of those up on the screen a bit later, but things like Wine Australia's FOB calculator, which takes you from FOB pricing right through to retail in a number of markets. Make sure that you understand those steps and what are the typical margins, the typical costs that affect your relationship and in that particular market. Make sure you understand how your competitive wines are priced in market. Use tools like Wine Searcher, which, all these things are widely available for your use. So know what your competitors are doing in market, know what the industry standards are and expectations in terms of margins for retailers, for wholesalers, and for your distribution partners along the way. This will give you the confidence to work through and have some of those figures in advance when you sit down and have this discussion. So as I said, walk through with your distributor or your buying partner from FOB to wholesale or retail, depending on what your needs are. Also, as you go through, make sure that you speak to critical price points for your wines in that chosen market. So every market is going to be slightly different. Make sure that you understand what retail shelf price points are critical. So, whether that's going to be a $10 to $15 band, $15 to $20, $20 to $25, etc. Understand what the expectation is from your buying partner as to where they feel your Chardonnay or your Cabernet or your Riesling needs to fit in that particular market. So have those discussions. Understand if there's any critical wholesale pricing for by the glass, whether it's a premium by the glass or an entry point by the glass, whether there's any other critical price points that you need to be aware of, such as wine of the month type guidelines, etc. So understand all of those. It will better arm you. It will give you confidence in your discussions moving forward. And it will show that you care about where your wines are hitting those critical price points for your buying partner, and showing that you have an understanding around that. So as you're walking through that, also ask what are the margin expectations in each scenario for if it's an importer that you're talking to, if they then on-sell to a distributor, they on-sell to a retailer, etc. So understand what all the margin expectations will be under the different scenarios. So wine of the month is going to be different from by the glass, which is going to be different from your normal everyday pricing. Also, if you've had these discussions in the past, as many of you will know that some cultures are going to be more open than others when it comes to pricing. Some people, because of the cultural context that you're in, may close down a little. Have that discussion as much as you can, tease it out, and try and make them feel comfortable about why you're asking this. It's not about getting in to understand and negotiate harder. It is about getting in and understanding the very thing that makes their business viable and yours, and just having that open discussion. So, and you do need to understand that some cultures will be more closed than others, and just tease that open as you need to. So you'll feel that as you go along. Step 3. Adopt a how can I support you approach throughout all of this. Okay, so right from point 1 where you're sitting down and setting your expectations, you should always be looking at, yes, this is a two-way partnership, and yes, your business has to be sustainable. They need to understand that as well. But in terms of the tone, in terms of your approach, in terms of how you're skewing the communications, always understand that, you know, usually the balance of power sits with your distributor or your buying partner. So having that "how can I support you" approach all throughout is absolutely critical. But it's also the right approach to have, especially when you want to flip it back and discuss what your needs are as well. So they need to understand that you're willing to not only say what you need, but what is it that they need as well. So having that upfront approach and putting it out there right from the start just gives them that confidence that their needs are going to be met. In doing so, in terms of how you can support your distributor, your buying partner, do make sure that the support that you're providing is relatively seamless. Have everything prepared and easy for them to access right from the get-go. So whether that is having a trade support section on your website, whether it is having easily accessed cloud-based file structures, anything along those lines where they can access the essentials of the business. You know what these are. They're things like, you know, detailed tasting notes, access to awards and reviews, good rich content for them to use in their business and their storytelling about your brand. You know, and then there's the dry stuff as well, you know, access to all the information around you know, case formats and palletization formats and everything that they need to ship your products easily. So have a think through all of that and keep things seamless and have that ready to go. Just moving back to the topic as well around how you can support someone. There are going to be times where sales performance targets are not met, and that is why it is really important for you to meet regularly and have that two-way discussion around meeting your expectations and checking in. But it's really important when you're doing this, of course, is that if objections are raised, like, you know, people are pushing back on, you know, your packaging, or people are pushing back on your pricing, or, you know, you're not in the market enough, you know, please be careful not to go on the attack here. So this is all about communications and taking that correct stance of how can I support you. So listening to them and understanding how you can achieve what they're trying to do, which is also what you're trying to do to make sales and make depletions. On that as well, I will say that it's really, this is also a part of the how can I support you approach. It's not also just about sales. It is about asking about depletions. And that goes back again to the former point number one, checking in regularly and understanding how depletions are going. That shows a how can I support you approach, because you're not just caring about how are these products moving from my shores to yours, but how are they moving off your shelves, out of your warehouse. And finally, yes, just remember again that the balance of power does sit with the distributor, so having that approach is really critical. The next step, step number 4, is using preferred communication protocols and platforms. So this is courtesy, and it is just, you know, common courtesy, good communications. First up, it's about not putting up barriers to communication with your buying partners. So first up, you know, we all know when someone gets our name wrong or incorrect that we don't like it. So make sure you do get names correct. Use the correct naming protocols for your particular market. So whether that is using prefixes and suffixes correctly, like san, the use of a name followed by san for in Japan, or using the prefix kun and then the name in Thailand. Understanding also that for Chinese names, of course, the family name is always first, followed by the given name. And it is always polite whenever you are dealing with anyone in these cultures, particularly Asian cultures, that you use the surname at the start until someone invites you to use their given name. So understand those things. There's whole webinars on these cultural protocols, of course, and that's not the purpose here, but it's just the step is just to be aware of that, to do your research and to get that right, so you're not putting up a barrier. If someone then wants to get familiar with you and invite you to use their given name right from the get-go, that's fine. And if you're confused about anything, don't hesitate to ask them directly. It's still better than getting it wrong. The next point we would like to cover here is to just simply, and again, this is a courtesy, ask your distributor how and when they prefer to receive your communications. Are they someone that likes to use the phone more than email? Are they someone that is absolutely fine about, doing business first thing in the morning or late at night? What is their preference, especially if you have a time zone challenge? If you're dealing with anyone in North America, you'll know that this is always a challenge. And are they more early morning people or evening people? Because you're going to have to make a decision there as to how and when you're going to communicate when you're having in-person or when you're having face-to-face communications or on the phone. And then, just ask them, what are their preferred platforms for various types of communications, and just making sure that you make it seamless for them. Again, these are not difficult things. It's all about just asking the questions and getting it right for them. And don't be too tied into your favorite protocols and platforms. Make sure that you use stuff that's going to work for your buyers. So these are things like for video calls, do they prefer Zoom, or are they more into Teams or Google Meet, etc.? Or do they prefer to use WeChat? For short messaging, do they use short messaging? Is it going to be WhatsApp or is it going to be WeChat? And it'll pretty much be WeChat in all of mainland China and WhatsApp for most other places. But some people don't use those short messaging platforms. And then for document management, we talked about this earlier in terms of, having seamless communications and all of your files available that you need to share. How are they going to be able to access those easily? Do they use Dropbox, SharePoint, Google Drive, or something else? For transferring files, quite often in mainland China in particular, there are difficulties with platforms like Dropbox. So be aware of that, ask the questions. And lastly, and certainly not least, and this is a really good bookend to the 5 simple steps to improve your communications, starting out, of course, with the setting your expectations and checking in regularly, whenever you can, doing that in person or face-to-face. Now, we know that in export, you can't always travel over to be with someone in person, but we have lots of options for we have lots of options in terms of video platforms now where you can have face-to-face communications as well. So meeting in person, actually in person is always best. And it's essential at important points in the relationship. So when you're first starting out, when you are first entering into an agreement and you're entering into the market and launching, this is a very critical time when you need to be able to build some rapport with someone face to face. You need to go out with them, have a meal with them, socialize with them. And just, meeting their team and right from the start, having that rapport and having those critical discussions. So at the start of the relationship, whenever you're in any very critical negotiation phases, that's also important to meet person whenever you can. And also when you are moving into new stages of the relationship, that's also an important time to meet in person. And to be able to do that on a regular basis. And it's not always possible to do it even once a year in some markets. It's just not viable to do that, but to try and do that wherever feasible. When you can't do that, then video calls are obviously the next best option. So with those regular check-in calls that I mentioned, which are the 2-way, try to do those by video if you can't do those in person. And phone calls is the next best option. At least with a phone call, it is two-way still in real time. At least you've got the voice intonation that you can work with. Face-to-face is better because you've got a bit of body language happening. And of course, in person, you've also got that additional opportunity to socialise and build rapport. Emails and messaging, of course, has its place. It's all about balance. You don't want to be phoning people every moment of the day. You don't want to be there all the time either. So have that conversation with your buying partners, find out what their needs are, and making sure that you have a balanced approach to your communications. Build rapport with your distributor through effective communications. That is the key. Okay, I think you've heard from me for enough right now, so I will stop sharing and hand back to Ruth, and we'll look at some case studies and examples. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Liz. Well, those things seem like when you see them on the screen, you go, that makes so much sense, but it's whether or not you actually do them or not. I've invited 3 exporters to come and speak to us today. I'm really thankful for their time because, like you, they're busy and they're trying to get out there and export and meet customers and do all of those things they need to do, but they have given up their time to speak. So I'm going to, before I do, just a reminder that you ask any questions in that Q&A box. But I'm going to introduce them one by one. So the first person I'm going to introduce is Brad Ray from Zonti's Footstep, who's based in McLaren Vale. So Brad's one of the co-owners of Zonti's, and that was created in 2003 when Brad and a group of wine industry mates, both sort of growers and winemakers, got together to make South Australian wines for sales to the UK. So for the last 22 years, Brad has managed Zonti's Footstep exports, which now go to 30 countries, including China, Netherlands, Canada, and even Turks and Caicos in the Bahamas. Exports didn't have, Brad also has a consulting business on the side, Brand Aid, that's helped 64 other wine businesses around the globe with business planning, branding, winemaking, and viticulture. He's also a great grower. And prior to Zonti's, he was the sales and marketing manager at Wira Wira and then Coriol. He moved to Australia in 1995 from Canada, but we don't hold that against him. Brad, make sure you're off mute. Can you speak to Liz's first tip on the importance of checking in regularly with your export partners? So, like, how frequently do you check in with yours?
Excellent. Thanks, Ruth. I appreciate this. And I'm quite honored to be asked to talk to people. I think, the knowledge that I've gained over my years is experiential, but, Matthew and Stephen are even more capable of doing the job better because they come from the Northern Hemisphere where most of us are actually trying to sell the wines at the moment, whereas in Canada, we're just akin to the Australian wine market, and it's a little bit different with the monopolies. The thing that I actually got when you guys approached me about this was when we're actually dealing with international markets, different structures within pricing, different societal setups and things like that. I found that it's really important to have your brand presented in a fashion that allows them to understand what your needs are quite clearly and succinctly from the day dot. So we've developed a one-pager introduction email that we've sent out, and over the years I've found, especially with the European market, that it gets lost in translation when we use a lot of the Australian lingo. So I'm trying to simplify the communication about what's important for us and what our brand ethos is all about in the wines that we're trying to sell. It's having that conversation with our importers around what's selling and the changes in those market demands, as they always do when we think we know what a market wants, and by the time we react to it, things change, and we have to adapt to that with our importers and distributors. So having open communication is really important from a standard where we actually do a lot of bi-monthly reports to our consumers and our distributors in regards to our accolades, stock on hand, what's selling through. We do that via email. We also use different platforms like WeChat and WhatsApp to communicate with the sales guys. The one thing that I think Liz mentioned was talking with our importers at a very high level. We got to remember that we're actually dealing with the boots on the ground. It's actually those sales people that I find really important to keep in touch with, not only the business partners that we're in association with. I always refer to them as, the hands within the market. We're the body as a wine business. Our distributors are actually the hands, and the fingers are actually the salespeople. So I really focus a lot on making sure that I keep on top of all of our distributors in those 30 different countries and all their multiple staff that they have on hand in the transitions to be able to create a relationship with them. So I have a monthly, bi-monthly, and a quarterly call sheet that I actually put together in my calendars, where I basically just reach out to touch to people, like Liz said, in small businesses like ours, trying to communicate with these people and create relationships is, I think, paramount to make it more than just a business association. It's a relationship that they take personally and become first of mind with them. One of the examples for me, we have a fairly good importer. Well, not fairly good. We have a good importer actually in Denmark. I don't speak Danish at all. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a easygoing human being in regards to business matters and things like this. But I've had a great relationship with Birte and Stefan over there. Birte is our actual agent in market, and she's aligned us with a couple of importers and basically is that translator, the go-between between them. But the big thing that I've made connections with Stefan on is just the simple passion of making wines of provenance and a sense of place and a love of food. So we spend at least every 6 weeks having a conversation about what we've eaten in the last couple months, what's growing out in the garden. It has nothing to do with business. It's creating that relationship of contact. And with that, we also end up having a lot of conversation and opening up opportunities. One of those things, I guess, in that whole expectation is making sure that you're really clear with your importers. Like in our business, we make 29 wines. 4 of them are key drivers, and I make sure that all of our importers and distributors know that out of those 4 key drivers, we're there to really support those as a constant supply mechanism. And the other wines that we make will run out. And we talk about that through our bi-monthly stock updates. Also gives me an opportunity when I'm talking to them in market that if they want those products, they need to be able to access it and grab hold of it and stock it themselves. So it's reiterating and communicating from a very simple structure what we think our business is to those importers and what they really want and need to be able to facilitate. And when you launch into a relationship with someone, it's make sure, like Liz said, that you have conversations about what you're going to do in that market. Starting off, finding an importer is very exciting, and we tend to go quick. I think with time, you learn to actually have conversations before you invest too much time and energy into it, that you actually have a very clear foundation and groundwork laid out of what you can do for them in that opportunity, whether you're flexible and able to grow with market demands. Are you actually there primarily to build your product within their marketplace, or are you there to help facilitate a mutual growth in that market and supply and expand your products? From a brand point of view, we didn't plan on having 30 different wines in 30 different countries. That's a progression that I'm sure Matthew's going to raise that issue when he brings it up, that you create product and opportunity as you go. Even if you're a estate-grown wine brand, you're going to have to adapt, or you basically perish as the market demands for your different products change.
Thanks, Brad. We might go. Thank you very much for explaining all that importance of making those relationships with the exporters, because that's really important. It doesn't have to all be talk about all the things that Liz says. It can be talking about food and wine.
Absolutely.
It does establish rapport. So Next, I'm going to introduce Stephen Jones. Stephen is the Export Director at Wira Wira, which also includes Ashton Hills Vineyard and Hardorf Hill brands. He is based in Hong Kong, and for the last 13 years, he's been running his own business called Discover Wines Asia, in which he sources New World wines for customers in Asia. Originally from the UK, he spent 6 years living in Chile, just for something totally different. And most of that was spent as the regional director for the second largest Chilean wine exporter. So Stephen's experience in export is much, much wider than Australia, and his expertise is obvious. So we've asked him to talk about probably the most difficult thing, about pricing and margins. So Stephen, can you tell us how important it is to have those pricing discussions and the deep discussions early in the relationship?
Sure. Thanks, Ruth. Obviously, a few things that Liz mentioned earlier as well. I'll probably end up going over a little bit here as I go through what I sort of want to say and end up with the sort of case study that I have from the sort of cultural and misunderstanding of not getting your pricing right in the very beginning. Yeah, so Ruth, as you mentioned, it's obviously probably stating the obvious, but getting your pricing right is obviously very crucial for your success. But obviously, then the most challenging conversations to have with your importer. So I'd say that it's obviously important that you get a fair and sustainable price from the very beginning. So you need to look beyond sort of own desired price and understand how it will actually translate to in market. So you're obviously going to have an open and honest discussion with your importer from the very beginning. And I guess the importance of a frank discussion will help prevent any sort of surprises and misunderstandings down the line. So you need to look at sort of all of the potential costs, and then obviously the ultimate price will depend on what you have from your sort of final selling price when you're looking at your sort of COGS. You want to sort of add in a margin to make sure that you have a buffer for any of these unexpected costs that allow for fluctuations in COGS throughout the year. That could be to do with great pricing and labor costs, and then obviously you want to build in the flexibility so you can not have to have this conversation of pricing every year with your importer, because it's obviously a difficult one, and it's best to sort of allow for a buffer so you have plenty of room when you've got to add things like commission fees, potential back labor requests in market, maybe some rework costs, and then A&P, which is what I'm going to focus on as a sort of case study, really about making sure that you've got A&P there set up and ready to go. For me, it's a real sort of key focus of getting your pricing right is to have A&P inbuilt there. So for me, I'd strongly recommend that you sort of discuss the importer, what kind of activities you want to do in market, which would hopefully sort of allow you sort of get a real good understanding of what you kind of need to invest at the very beginning in order to make your brand and I guess get an insight into how to further build the brand moving forward. So, I mean, just to give you a quick sort of example from myself, when I was working in Chile as the sort of commercial director there with VSBT Wine Group, we faced a kind of challenging situation with one of our importers in Vietnam who wanted to sort of run a major campaign for a premium brand of ours called 1865, which we were doing in conjunction with Audi. We were using the brand basically to sponsor a number of top-end sort of golf tournaments throughout the country, and the plan was to sort of reward competitors who could score under 65 on an 18-hole golf course, which was a great initiative, exactly the kind of product placement you wanted and the positioning we wanted, but there was no A&P in place to back it up. So it ended up being quite a sort of heated exchange, and it kind of escalated quickly with them threatening to disengage with us. but sort of, you know, these sort of situations, you have to understand there's a lot of cultural differences in terms of how people react and stuff. And I think Liz mentioned about how staying calm in situations and sort of allowing everyone to have a deep breath. We managed to work up a constructive plan, you know, based on sort of expected sales uplift from this. And through a bit of creative thinking on both sides, we're able to sort of get the AMP to fund a campaign. And now 1865 is actually one of the most successful brands in Vietnam off the back of this. So for me, this is a kind of valuable lesson in sort of remaining calm under pressure, understanding that cultural differences and language barriers can obviously cause issues, and that working, you know, if you work together, you can sort of find a solution. And I think that this helps build trust and ultimately leads to success in the long run. However, you know, this could easily have been avoidable had a proper commercial plan been put in place from the start. So, you know, it just goes back to really sort of, I think, as Liz mentioned, you can find ways and use tools. I think there's a retail calculator, FOB to retail calculator on Wine Australia website that actually allows you to put in your pricing, and it works for a number of different markets, key markets. So you can actually sort of work out what your pricing is and how it would look in markets. So, you know, I think, you know, just in quick summary of all of this, my key conclusions would be basically open communication is vital, targeting a healthy margin, think of AMP as a strategic investment, planning prevents problems, use tools available for preparation, as you mentioned, and then just look at the bigger picture. You know, planning for the long term is key, really. So yeah, that would be my kind of summary on pricing.
And thank you so much, Stephen. That was very useful. Great to hear an example there and glad you were able to turn it around. So we'll have Matt talk on tip 3. So Matt McCulloch is the Managing Director at Langmile Winery in the Barossa. Matt was a shareholder of Terry's, one of UK's largest importers at the time, and worked with 75 suppliers across 13 countries for 11 years. So he gained a lot of first-hand experience of those difficult differences that a great export partner can make. His background served him well when he moved to South Australia in 2006, where he's been involved in wine exports for the last 19 years, including Kirrahul Wines, Chateau Tanunda and Langmile. He's a regular traveller to China, Europe and the UK, and Langmile exports to 19 countries directly, and it represents about 40% of their sales volume. And the top markets for Langmile are the UK, China and the USA. So Matt, I'll hand over to you. And if you can talk to the third point that Liz was talking about is how can I support your approach to export partners actually look like for you?
Thanks. It's certainly at the moment in the current climate, it's about reassuring your export partners that the pressure to sell your wines does not solely rest upon them. Sharing that pressure and being supportive of their efforts will help strengthen the relationships, because ultimately no one knows your wines, their stories, their strengths better than you. Simply shipping them to the other side of the world, leave it to the importer to sell, will not create a strong partnership. The simple thing, I think Liz, there's not too much more to add there. I think Liz covered it exceptionally well. But it's about listening to your importer, because they probably know the market better than you do. So if you ask, how can we best support you? They will more than likely have an answer. It's then up to you to act on that. That will build trust, which leads to more opportunities and more ways to support them. It's pretty simple. It's say what you'll do and then do what you said. If you do that, you won't go too far wrong. You've got to understand, when you're supporting your importers, how your wines are perceived in their market. You may have a different opinion of your own wines, but in a very different context, they may look completely different. How Langmile looks in the UK is not how it looks in Australia, is not how it looks in China, is not how it looks in Vietnam, etc., etc. So It's then how can you actually support them? Is it attending portfolio tastings, which is important to them because it's their company? Is it attending trade shows? Is it entering relevant wine shows? Is it sending samples to wine shows in their market or to wine buyers? Take the time to learn about their markets and understand the challenges that they face. When you're in the market, the thing I was taught when I was at Coca-Cola and Pepsi in the past, it was called walk the store. If you want to understand where your wines are being sold, now that could be in the on-premise, so that's, you know, bars, cafes, restaurants, pubs, hotels. Look at the wine list, and don't just look at what's in Australia, look at what's on the entire wine list. And you can do that before you even leave Australia. You can find most places, you can do your research, look for the gaps, highlight any duplication, and then offer an alternative. That preparation is absolutely key. And you do the same thing with the off-premise, be that a supermarket, a bottle shop, a specialist retailer, an independent retailer. Be aware of global trends and monitor your export figures from your region, which you can do with the Wine Australia Export Dashboard. If you can demonstrate an understanding of the industry and their market, rather than simply giving them your wine to sell, they will appreciate that you understand their challenges. You can listen to influential influential voices in their markets and make contact with them to raise the profile. And when it comes to some of the practicalities, it's about being an easy supplier to deal with. You don't want your wine turning up at a warehouse and getting rejected because you haven't updated your palletization details, because you've changed bottle weight for 1 year, for example. You want to make sure that your invoices are correct so that it doesn't lead to additional time chasing payments. You need to make sure that you, as Liz said, you've got a trade section on your website. That's step one. Step two, which is absolutely vital, is making sure that information is up to date. Current vintage, current images, vintage reports, whatever it is. If you've got large files, which most of us do now because there are increasingly high resolution images and video content, use Dropbox, SharePoint, whatever it might be. And again, just ensure those are regularly updated. You don't want to miss opportunities because your information is out of date and your importer couldn't find that information because you were asleep or on a plane to somewhere. They need to be able to find that at a minute's notice, because ultimately luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And if you've got everything there and you're relying on your importer to get that deal over the line, and it's the middle of the night in Australia, or you're rushing to get from one side of an airport to another, you may miss out simply by not doing the simple things, which is supporting your importer by having the information readily to hand and easily updated.
I think you said that in one of our chats that you actually have a trade resource section of your website for that information.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just a basic login so that all your importers can get in and they can find whatever they need, because as much as we'd like everyone to be on the same wine around the world at the same time, they're not. And you may be on 2 different vintages in different parts of the world. So somebody may be looking for a 2022 vintage report, or they want to see a photo of an old vine, or they need a comment from the winemaker about the most recent Riesling from 2025. So within that, they can find all that information without having to contact us directly. If they do contact us, that normally means that we haven't updated something. So I ask the team, okay, why are we being asked this? It's a good signal and it's a good reminder to keep everything up to date.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. That was great. Talking about communication platforms, I might bring Brad back on, because Brad, you use different communication platforms, and you've used SharePoint, I know, in the past, or perhaps even currently. What have been the challenges with that, and in terms of your communication?
Well, I mean, I'm going to go over a little bit of what Matt's talked about, but we're exporting to 30 countries. Not everyone speaks English. It's a lesson I learned a long time ago when we had very verbose back labels all in English. If you're selling to someone in Vietnam or Belarus, we were quite popular in. English is not their first language. We do use multiple platforms, and as Liz mentioned too, in China, it's hard for them to access some of those things. So we're Microsoft based. We use OneDrive and SharePoint as a primary, but in other markets, being able to give access to that along with the security levels that a lot of these platforms have, we try and actually make sure that we have ease of access. Like Matt said, you want to be first in, first thought, the first person that they turn to. So making it easy for someone to recall that information, making it fresh in their mind. We use Dropbox as well as SharePoint now. And basically there is a plugin that they've put out that I found in the last 6 weeks that it actually migrates and keeps everything populated. On the website, we always have our tasting notes, both current vintage and past vintage, up to 12 different years of each of the 29 wines up there, along with high resolution bottle shots. Liz mentioned at the beginning of her speech about the TechFiche. TechFiche is that technical board and dry spreadsheet that most of the larger monopolies, supermarkets, retail chains will have for bottle weights, recycling claims around different areas in different worlds that we keep up to date and populated. We also make sure that we fill those in for our importers in different countries if they have their own platform. You have to become a little bit of a wizard when it comes to Excel to be able to migrate data around fast for all these things. It is boring, but once it's there, it's accessible. And if you can do it for them, it's great. I know that we used to use a plugin with J-Curve, which is our accounting package, to be able to send out communications to our importers and distributors around the place. I'm a bit old school, so I've gone back to using direct mail, which is actually an app based for Mac. You can also use it on PC. And it basically, you can upload your template. You can use it for sending out newsletters or updates. So bi-monthly, I basically just send out a broadcast to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that we have in the business. It doesn't matter if there's a sales rep, the business owner, the person that does the ordering, someone in the warehouse. It basically gives them an update of our accolades, what we've won in wine shows, where our stocks are at, when we're going to be bottling the next vintages, just broad information. And that also is triggered, I guess, back to my platform where I actually have my call lists scheduled around those as follow-ups. Again, it's being front of mind. Like Matt said, if you give people the data and the information and that they're comfortable and that they think of they're in that area of expertise with what you have to sell, then you're going to be the first thing that's going to come out of their lips when an opportunity comes up to grasp a sale in the marketplace. We all know our products, personally the best. We need to be able to make sure that we facilitate that information and that passion about our products to each of them. And it's hard when you've got multiple languages too. So, different platforms, as Liz said, WhatsApp, WeChat, you've got to be flexible and you got to make sure that you utilize as many of them as possible.
All right. So we came to our last tip, which is that importance of meeting face to face. I'm going to throw to Steve actually, because you're actually based in Hong Kong. What are the advantages of that, and why are you based in Hong Kong?
Well, I'm based in Hong Kong because of my own business that started up sort of 15 years ago. But through connections in the wine trade, Matt Deller, who's the CEO of Wira, he was looking for someone to really sort of pick up the export side of the business for Wira at the time. And then when we sort of bought Ashton and then Handorf, it kind of increased the need to sort of have someone nearer to our sort of key markets. Asia obviously is becoming more and more prominent as the sort of more traditional markets like the UK and the US sort of stagnate slightly. And so there's obviously easier to face-to-face meetings with key customers here, and also the time zone is a bit better for generally our global customers than sort of from Australia. So yeah, it's obviously good, but it's not something that everyone can do. So, you know, obviously, as I mentioned about face-to-face and in-market presence, obviously it's all about helping to sort of build strong relationships. And, you know, there's nothing better than actually being present in market, but, you know, that's not always possible. So, you know, if you can't be in market, then obviously you need to look to other ways that you can possibly, you know, have those sort of face-to-face meetings with customers. And, you know, that is basically prioritizing video calls, really, if you can't be in market. So, you know, that can, to a certain extent, help with communications and build a personal connection. But, you know, ideally would be visiting market at least once a year, if possible. You know, I was sort of thinking about it before, and some of the things that we do in some of our markets. We actually use an agency, so you can use marketing agencies, but these typically obviously charge a fee, normally a retainer fee, and then a sort of commission on shipments. But they do give you quite a bit of info, so they're quite close to the importers in market. They speak the same, you know, often or not, they have people who actually can speak the same language, which obviously helps you get a kind of better insight into what your importers are really thinking. And plus, because they're kind of seen as sort of bridge between your importer and you know, yourself, you can kind of get more honest answers sometimes than you would by asking yourself directly. So, you know, it's just a bit different way to sort of route to market, I guess. To help with brand building. So they'll basically build programs integrated to your sort of distribution strategies. So it'll allow you to sort of focus on visibility and activation. So they don't actually do anything in terms of sales. They're just literally your sort of bridge with your importer there. So these are kind of another option. But if you don't obviously have money to be paying retainers and being in market, then I guess what has kind of become more available recently is the sort of leveraging technology for your connection. So there's a lot of, it's probably quite a controversial topic, but AI can you know, can significantly enhance your virtual communication, if you like. You know, I'm not sure how many of you use Microsoft Teams. I'm sure a lot of you do, and they actually have an AI feature that actually provides you with real-time translation. Obviously, when you're working with a lot of these markets, there is obviously a language barrier. So, you know, these partners probably don't have, their native language isn't English. So this can help sort of generate sort of transcripts and summaries. And then, you know, once you've got that, you can probably do a summary, email it to your importer after, and just make sure you're all on the same sort of page that, you know, it avoids communicate confusion later on. So both of you on the same page. So there's a couple of things you can do, but obviously it's always best to be in market, because when you're in market, you can actually go and see exactly where the importer is selling, what accounts, you know, what kind of network they have. And, you know, if it's not going to the right places, then, you know, there needs to be a discussion there about how you can revise your strategy, or if that partner's even right for you. So yeah, that would kind of be my summary on you know, communication with importers.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've only got a couple of minutes left of our webinar. We will be ending it at 1:30. There's no questions in the Q&A, so I think people have just been interested in hearing the stories. We'll hear one more story, which will be from Matt. But before you do that, I'm going to ask Alex just to pull up a quick poll. It only just requires a quick click just to let us know if this webinar topic has been relevant to you. So if we could just ask if you're on, just quickly give a quick click, and then we'll finish with Matt, because it is expensive to do all these face-to-face trips and travel overseas. It is quite a big investment in your budget, but Matt has actually had some success with that. So we will ask Matt to talk about what happened when you went to the UK one time. Matt, you've got a minute just to tell us your quick story.
Very quickly, nothing beats going to market, a hug, a handshake, meeting the team, from the warehouse to the salespeople. Sales teams change. So make sure you're there. They've got thousands of wines in the portfolio. You've got to be more educational, informative, more entertaining than the next one, because there'll be a Canadian, a Chilean, an Argentinian, somebody from all over France, Europe, Spain. However, in the UK, I've been after Waitrose for 10 years. Ali Mawson, who was ex-Cellar Masters Wine Market in Australia, was the buyer. Changed jobs. She changed buying responsibilities. She had 2 periods of maternity leave. Stars never quite aligned. New buyer took over, Becky Hull. And with a new buyer comes a new opportunity, because they always like to make their mark. So I communicated very clearly with my importer, Alex Canetti at Berkman, that in 2023, the Australia Trade Tasting in London, that we had to meet Becky and to find out exactly what she was looking for from Australia and from Barossa in particular. He did that. I brought the right samples to the trade tasting in London, January 23. Becky loved the wines. She rejigged her itinerary, which was already set to visit Australia in the March of 2023. Because of that clear brief, that clear understanding of listening, asking questions, and acting on the information, she visited and she loved the wines. We started a project which hit the shelves in October 2024, which was a Waitrose #1 Shiraz in partnership with Waitrose. And it's gone so well that we've just bottled the 2nd vintage, and it was bottled yesterday. So here we go. So that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't in market, I hadn't asked the questions, I hadn't got my importer aligned, he hadn't communicated with the buyer, he hadn't asked exactly what she wanted, what she was looking for, volume, price, style. We hadn't forced our way onto the itinerary, and we kept listening and we kept communicating, and it was 18 months of communication and being patient. So it is doable, but being in market, there is no substitute, but it is expensive, and you have to keep doing it. You can't turn up for 1 year and then not go back for years. You got to keep doing it. Invest in it, because it will pay dividends.
What a wonderful way to finish our webinar. Thank you so much to all of our speakers, to Liz Mencel, to Matthew McCulloch, to Stephen Jones, and to Brad Ray. We really appreciate your time. You can get the webinar recording. As I said, Alex will email you a link. We've got another webinar in October, on the 14th of October, and that is on database decisions using Wine Australia's free market insight tools. So you'll see that come out on socials and on the Wine Communicators page. But thank you very much for all joining us. I'll ask the presenters just to stay on for a moment. Or actually, what will happen is the webinar will end, and I'll ask the presenters just to all dial back in on your link. But thank you very much to all of our members and the non-members who came along today to learn about communicating and export. See you next time.